From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Bye week is over with, and we have another Wildcast podcast coming your way on the Wildcaster app, also on Apple, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms. I'm Justin Spears, per usual, here with my guy, Michael Lev. Subscribe, rate, and comment the Spears and Ali podcast and share with all your friends. We appreciate those who support the podcast, and we definitely want to get those numbers up. But I've noticed we haven't received a lot of comments in the last several months. So if you guys want to comment, let us know what you think about the podcast. Please do so. On Apple. We appreciate that.
That's a great call. Please do that. And if they're good and they're they're PC, they're not rated R, we'll read them on the podcast in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be a fun segment for sure. Please let us know what you think of the show. Very football oriented here in the fall, but you know what's around the corner. They've already had an exhibition basketball game this past Friday. Basketball season will be cranking up sooner than later, and myself and Justin and the rest of our team will be talking a lot of hoops in the months to come, in addition to football.
I'm excited. And basketball beat Lewis Clark State 110-70. Umar Bala was out. Pelle Larson also out. Mo Krievis, I think, was also out too. So 3 important pieces out, and yet they still won by 40. But as expected in an exhibition game against a school from Lewiston, Idaho, right?
Yeah, someone made the joke that they were like, I wasn't aware that Lewis and Clark was a state. But I had never heard of that school before they played this game. It's always hard to schedule these things. I mean, I think USC had a quote unquote secret scrimmage against UNLV over the weekend, and Isaiah Collier apparently went like completely berserk. Isaiah Collier, who's actually the number 1 recruit in the class this year, not Bronny James, who gets all the all the attention. Yes. Yeah, people are not. Yeah, the national media is not knocking down Dave Tuttle's door over at USC to request interviews with Isaiah Collier. But hey, maybe that's a mistake. Mm-hmm. Player to watch and a team to watch for sure in this last year of the Pac-12. But hey, we're here to talk about football because football is up and running again. Oregon State is coming to town on Saturday. I think a really good team, Justin, like in a different way than USC and Washington. More run-oriented.
Balanced. Very
sound, balanced team that is not going to shoot itself in the foot. So I think it's going to be a really big challenge for Arizona. I actually was the highest. I ranked Oregon State higher than any other AP voter this week. I had them number 8 in my poll.
Top 10.
I think where did they land? Did they land?
Number 11.
At number 11?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't do that on purpose to try to hype up the matchup or boost Arizona's RPI, which isn't really a thing in football. But I just sometimes other teams lose or they don't look good in a given week, so they kind of fall. And Oregon State didn't play, and sometimes you benefit from that. But their only loss on the season is a 3-point loss at Washington State. Washington State, pretty respectable showing against Oregon, including a backdoor cover.
Yeah.
That was really annoying for some of us on Saturday. But very also well-coached team. Jonathan Smith is, no one really talks about Jonathan Smith that much outside this footprint, but as good of a coach as you'll find.
And also, my favorite coach on their staff, offensive line coach, Jim Mahalchek, who is arguably the best offensive line coach in the country, just in terms of developing guys. I mean, he's been at Arizona and Oregon State, and think about all the number of talented individuals who have come in under his tutelage and have shined. I think about all the great players. Collectively, the offensive line wasn't always the strongest point for Arizona during the Rich Rodriguez regime, but every few years or so, you would get a really good 1 or 2 offensive linemen that would actually play very well and be potentially all conference guys.
Yeah, and he's doing this without 4- and 5-star players.
Yeah, exactly.
Too,
and he's doing that at Oregon State right now.
Like almost all 3-star guys. I was asked on a Corvallis radio show whether we miss Coach Michalczyk down here. And I said yes because he's a great guy to deal with, and he's a really good coach, and he's really, really well liked and respected by everybody. But I also, made the point that Arizona has a really good offensive line coach now. I think Brendan Carroll has done an absolutely outstanding job of developing this offensive line. So, a couple higher end players, I think Jordan Morgan, was he a 4-star?
Morgan?
Or a 3-star?
No, Morgan was a 3-star.
3-star, okay.
Yeah.
Both he and Jonas Sava-Anaya were 3-stars, but maybe 3+, or 4-, like however you want to phrase it. I think they're on the high end.
And honestly, they had certain things in the recruitment where I think, if they had gotten just a little bit more eyes on them, they would have been boosted because Jordan Morgan didn't have social media. So no one knew who this kid was. And then he committed to Arizona, and then USC was like, well, what do we have here? Who is this kid over here? And then Clay Helton started recruiting him, and USC was very high on Jordan Morgan. And Jonas Sava-Anaya, like, it's hard to recruit players from Hawaii.
And especially hard during the pandemic.
That
made it even harder. There wasn't as much travel, to go see prospects. There weren't as many camps. All of these things were sort of suppressed during the pandemic. But regardless, I think Brendan's done an amazing job here with that offensive line. That's been a strength of the team.
No doubt.
And like you said, that's not something that we could say in these parts for quite a while.
Yeah, collectively, Arizona's offensive line is as good as it's been in over a decade, well over a decade. I mean, maybe even during the Mike Stoops and even the Dick Tomey era. I mean, this is a really good offensive line. And, you look at the bookends, the two tackles are great, but then you look at Wendell Moe at left guard, who was just recently named to the midseason All-American team for the
freshman All-American
or freshman All-American team for the by Football Writers Association of America. Josh Baker, I think, has improved as Arizona center. And then at right guard, I've been very impressed by the level of play that Leif Magnuson has brought in place of Raymond Polito. And when Polito is healthy and ready to go, you have a stud freshman right there who could play 3 more games and still redshirt this year because he's only played in 1 game. So Arizona's offensive line is as good as it's been. And Lev, we're talking about Oregon State and like the challenges that they bring. Is this a good preparation or a good game to get you ready for Utah later on down the road? And because you got to play Utah, that's the final home game of the season. That's a big one right there, and that could be a game where Arizona is trying to win to go to a bowl game. But then again, I also think about UCLA and what they're really good at. And they have a really good defense, and they're really good up front. So I don't think that this is a preparation for just Utah. I think this is a preparation for the next few games that they have on their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado, I think, is the exception to that. They're a very passing-oriented team, kind of, not as good in the lines as the 3 teams you mentioned. I mean, UCLA they are a kind of a Big Ten style of team as they played this last year, the Pac-12, and get ready to go to the Big Ten next year. Really good on defense. They run the ball. Have had a little bit of a revolving door at quarterback. They changed quarterbacks this past week. Chip Kelly said Dante Moore was a little banged up and wasn't able to practice as much as they wanted to. So they made the change there, and it worked really well for them in their dominant win over Stanford. The more that we move past that Stanford-Colorado game, it feels like the second half of that particular game, Stanford's comeback might have been the flukiest event of the entire college football season. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were horrible in the first half. They were terrible from start to finish against UCLA. They've been pretty bad against most everybody, except for that one half and overtime against Colorado, where they came back from a huge deficit. But when you look at Oregon State, they don't give up a ton of points. Like I said, they run the ball.
Yeah,
they don't turn the ball over that much. So you got to bring your hard hat. And Utah is very similar. As you mentioned, I'd say maybe Oregon State's kind of the poor man's version of Utah, right? And this will be a great test to see if Arizona has truly improved its line play on both sides of the ball. It looks like they have. There's
Especially
a lot of evidence.
line.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they have. But I don't know if they've played teams as physical as the teams that they are about to face in 3 of the next 4 games. So that will be kind of the thing to watch, besides, that whole quarterback situation, which remains still a little bit unsettled.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of more like wink, wink. We all know, at least I'm just putting on my speculation hat here. This is not sourced by any means, but it's got to be Noah Fifita, right? Noah Fifita moving forward. I mean, you look at how clean he's played. I mean, back-to-back Pac-12 Freshman of the Week. I mean, that's a really tough call to make for Jedd Fisch. But I guess we'll find out. We are recording this Monday afternoon before Jedd Fisch's press conference. But and the whole thing about that situation, it's like it's not that like Jayden de Laura is a bad quarterback. I think Jayden de Laura could start at a lot of schools in college football. But it's just, right now, Noah Fifita gives you a really good chance at winning football games. And, going toe-to-toe with 2 top 10 teams, going the distance with them, nearly winning one on the road, and then beating the daylights out of Washington State, I think Noah Fifita has proven enough to be QB1, but I guess that we'll find out here very soon.
Do you think? Yeah,
that remains unsettled.
I mean, look, by the time everybody listens to this, Jedd Fisch will have had his press conference. I don't think he's going to make a declaration.
No.
During that presser,
Gamesmanship.
There's a lot of gamesmanship going on here, but to me, this is it. This is the deal. Noah Fifita has played too well to be removed from the lineup.
Yeah.
Like, how could you take him out? He's gotten better every single time that they've played. He's helped keep them in games against what at the time were 2 top 10 ranked teams. USC has since fallen off, but still at USC on a Saturday night, it's not an easy assignment. And then they trounced Washington State, and he was super efficient in that game. So I don't know what would be the case for benching him. Just unless you think Jayden is that much better, but in recent games, Jayden hasn't been that great. He's been very inconsistent.
Because if you think about it, what would have happened if he didn't get injured and they played out the fourth quarter? They were losing that game when that happened. And then Noah Fifita had to come off the bench and kind of put on his cape a little bit. But again, didn't do too much. Was just playing within the offense, was playing very sound and clean. And they just moved right down the field and scored right away. So this is a tough call for Jedd Fisch. But again, like I think it goes back to Jayden de Laura. He's not a bad quarterback. I just think the quarterback that's playing right now is just playing better, and you just got to go with him.
Yeah, I think you were one of the ones who pointed this out. Some people also kind of made this observation on social media that it kind of seemed like that moment at the end of the Washington State game where Jayden took the knee. Noah was the deep back, and then they hugged. Was kind of a passing of the torch moment. Like, hey, kid, you got this. I got your back. I mean, we'll see if that's the case. And Noah could always go out there and he could falter, or he could get injured, or any number of things could happen. One of the points that Jedd made last Monday was just how many backup quarterbacks have had to play in the NFL. Like, guys go down all the time. You're always one snap away.
Heck, a
right?
D2 quarterback won an NFL game.
He sure did.
Bajan.
Go Bears.
Which, fun fact,
yeah.
His dad's like a 28-time arm wrestling champion?
No, I did not know that. I did see that Tyler was very tatted up. There was a video of him getting the game ball in the locker room. He had tats all over his back and like half of his chest as well. Interesting story. Amazing story. Like, undrafted Division II player starting and winning an NFL game as a rookie. Crazy.
Shepherd is the school he played at. Unbelievable story. But again, like, backup quarterback came in, won a game for the Bears. Like, your number can be called at any point.
You remember the Cal game that broke the losing streak?
Yeah.
how many different guys took snaps in that game? Like, I mean,
yeah,
Will
like
Plummer was like in and out of the locker room with a shoulder injury, and he had that big like cut on his hand. And oh man, I'm forgetting the name. What was the name of that walk-on quarterback who came in and threw like one pass, and it was intercepted? Oh, now we're gonna have to look this up.
Oh man, was it Braden Zermano?
This is quality podcasting.
Is it Braden Zermano? Okay, find that out because it's really bugging me right now. I think you're right. There were like 4 quarterbacks who actually took snaps in that game.
I feel like Jamari
Joyner definitely
did take a snap
for
or
sure.
two. Yeah,
at Wildcat. But anyways.
All right, why don't we get to the first mailbag question while I look this up?
So we had some leftover questions from last week, and we appreciate you guys for submitting those. Keep them coming. Lev actually put out the bat signal on Monday, and we appreciate those who submitted your questions. But going back to the mailbag from last week, AZ Cats Go says, what's the likelihood of Arizona's really good players being poached like Dorian Singer, such as T-Mac, Big Jonah, Little Jonah, Manu? I don't know. This is I think T-Mac would definitely be one that like you would have to kind of fend off people because you know a player like T-Mac is very intriguing for schools like that are going to the Big Ten and other conferences like Arizona. But then again, like Noah Fafita is the guy. T-Mac came to Arizona with Noah Fafita and Kean Burnett and Jacob Manu. Do you think if those 3 guys, if they weren't committed to Arizona, you think T-Mac would have went to the U of A? He was going to follow wherever his buddies went. So I think with all of his buddies still here, I think T-Mac is going to stay locked in. But then again, I also thought Dorian Singer was going to come back and play for Arizona. So anything can happen in college football, but I feel very confident in saying that the really good players that Arizona has right now, they're not going to be worried about them going elsewhere.
I don't think any of those guys are going to leave. It's always a possibility, but there's definitely an extra layer to this quarterback decision and situation in that if you make Noah the guy and he's the starter next year, I think you're almost guaranteeing that T-Mac stays.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, this is like the dream for them, to play together in college for a whole season. What in all likelihood will be T-Mac's last year before he goes to the NFL.
They'll all start likely because McLaughlin's going to leave, right? After this year, is he out of eligibility? Or
no, I think he is. Yeah, so Kean Burnett can go into the lineup too if he's ready.
It's perfect. It's too perfect.
It really is. And Jonah Savanaya, any team would love to have him, but I just don't see the incentive for him to leave. I mean, he's got a good thing going here, for sure. Deion Sanders made a comment before the season that he didn't care about culture. Okay, he literally said, like, I don't care about culture. It's all about winning, which to me is kind of an NFL type of attitude. Yeah. Jedd Fisch has really made a concerted effort to build a culture here of family and togetherness and supporting one another and all of those things. And where it pays off, in my opinion, is the transfer portal. Can you keep those guys who might be tempted to leave just because of money, but they would rather stay because of the culture that you have built here? Now, there are certain players, I think, who could be candidates to transfer. I think look at the wide receiver room. There might be some guys in there who just haven't gotten the playing time, who are good players, and there's another wave of receivers coming in.
Yeah.
I think that's an area maybe. I don't think Jonah Coleman will leave, even though, man, 2 outstanding freshman running backs are coming in. Every time I look at Adam Muhammad's stats from Apollo, they're like completely insane. And you and I saw Jordan Washington play in person, and he was unbelievable. He was just unreal in that game. So fast, so elusive. But Jonah will be that guy, I think, the lead, the Michael Wiley of the group next year.
Yeah. And
kind of help to bring the young guys along. You never know with recruiting. You never know with the portal. But I think they're in good position to keep all those dudes. By the way, the quarterback that we're trying to think of is Luke Ashworth.
Who could forget?
Yes. Yeah, and he had to come in that game because there was just so much chaos. And that was, you could do a 30 for 30 on that game. I swear. Remember, like Cal was missing like half of its team
because of COVID.
Because of COVID protocols.
That whole game was wild. That whole day.
It was so wild.
Arizona
that was the
winning
only
10-3.
pass attempt of Luke Ashworth's Arizona career, and it was intercepted. Poor Luke.
Oh,
poor Luke. We're not trying to make fun of you, Luke. We're just it's just a funny situation.
That's funny. Okay. This one comes from that Arizona fan. Is it time to have a conversation about Polito redshirting? Mostly for two reasons. The first being his health and letting him not rush back. And the second, that the offensive line is playing great this year, so no need to rush him back.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good question for Coach Fish, I think. Just how to handle that situation. I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion between the coaching staff and the family. And the beauty of the redshirt rule is that you could play him a few games. Like you said, he could play 3 more games this year and preserve his redshirt. So I think that's what they're probably going to do. See if they can get him out there. Mm-hmm. But like you also said, Leif Magnuson's playing great. And it's, again, one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it situations. Mm-hmm. I think that you're looking at a future starting left tackle maybe in Raymond Polito next year. So maybe you just kind of start that transition during fall. Gosh, I'm assuming that they're going to have bowl practices. If they have bowl practices, maybe you can start that transition and start getting him some reps out there at left tackle
in practice.
To get him ready for. I think that's where he's destined to land, unless they move Big Jonah over there. But I think Big Jonah at right tackle is a perfect fit for his playing style. And
absolutely,
he's done really well there.
Absolutely. You got some questions over there, Mr. Lev?
I do. Thanks to everyone who submitted these. We will start with
some good ones.
Joe. Joe says, every game left on the schedule is winnable. With that being said, I believe our ceiling is certainly 8-4 for the season. If we achieve that, will Jed be receiving calls from other programs? And if so, do you guys think he would leave this soon? Look, never say never when it comes to the coaching carousel in college football. But I really don't see that happening for Jed Fish, especially if they have like one winning season out of the first 3. He'll definitely draw. I'm sure he'll draw interest. People pay attention to these things. He's got a really good offense. Like I said, he's built a great culture here.
When Jed Fish says it's personal, like he really means it.
He does.
Like this job was personal for him because it was the first time he was becoming a head coach. The next job, that's going to be job number 2, Lev. I feel like job number 2's got to be like Florida, the school that he attended and went to law school and also coached under Steve Spurrier, or maybe an NFL job. Outside of that, I can't see a situation where.
Yeah, I could, if we're just talking about jobs that might be of interest to him, I could see UCLA being a job that would be of interest to him. Michigan might have a coaching change coming up with the whole Jim Harbaugh latest controversy. Those are just places that Jed has coached before. But I don't see him leaving. He signed a contract extension, right, last offseason, 2-year extension. That would put him through what? So his first year was 21. That put him through 2027. He has talked about like wanting to build something, right? He talks about that all the time, doesn't he? Like
you just gave me like this like nightmarish scenario for Arizona fans.
Okay.
Like him going to Michigan, and then he gets like T-Mac and Big Jonah
and
everyone through the transfer portal and just goes full Colorado.
Oh, my Lord. That would be a nightmare for Arizona fans.
Hey, it's October. It's spooky season.
Don't scare the people like that, Justin. No. I mean, look, it's a great question. And if the program achieves success, it'll be an annual question.
Yeah.
But he's moved around a lot. It's not like he doesn't have a track record for moving around. He's changed jobs frequently, but this is what he's wanted his whole life.
Yeah, this is different.
And he's got a chance to do something special here. And honestly, like the Big 12, it's kind of there for the taking to a degree. I mean, it's a good and deep conference, but there's no dominant team. No. The 2 most dominant teams are leaving.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for him. Okay. So this next one is a great one too. It's from Senor Huevito.
I like it.
Who's at Martin Bungle 23. What are your thoughts on the crazy number of attempts to go for it on fourth down, especially in the Pac-12? Seems like the coaches are trying to prove how manly they are as opposed to doing what is best for the team. Let's start with this, Justin. You're familiar with the moves that Dan Lanning made or didn't make in that Oregon-Washington game. What'd you think of that?
Just gutsy. I mean, if it's desperate time at fourth quarter, obviously you have no choice but to do it. But man, these guys are just getting really just gutsy, and I think maybe it's
like in a good way or a bad way.
In a bad way. Well, also listen, you're talking to a Chargers fan who gets kicked in the groin week in and week out because Brandon Staley, he goes for it on fourth down early in the game, in the first and the second quarter. So I'm not a big fan of it. I've always been kind of like the Pete Carroll, I think, had this mindset when he was at USC. He was like, listen, if the ball's essentially at midfield, like, we're going to go for it. Just because we trust our team enough to go for it in that scenario. I understand if you want to go for it on, like, your own 40-yard line. If you're close to midfield, you really feel like you have a shot. By all means, I think you should go for it. But, man, when you're, like, going for it on your own 24-yard line or 36-yard line, that, to me, it almost seems like it's like the new generation of coaches who have all played Madden.
Okay.
And they all went for it on fourth down, and like that's just the mindset that they have.
Yeah. All right. Here's what I'll say. First of all, about the Washington-Oregon situation, I think the mistake that Dan Lanning made was going for it on fourth down when they could have kicked a field goal, like at the end of the first half, and they let time run out. That's 3 points you've just given away, and you're getting the ball to start the second half.
Yeah.
They had another situation very similar to that in the second half where they could have gotten 3 points. They ended up losing by 3. Going for it at the end of the game to put the game away, you make one more first down, Michael Penix never gets the ball again. That makes sense. I think the field position should factor in for sure.
Yes.
Like you're talking about Brandon Staley, the ones he's done have been like fourth quarter deep in your own territory.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to protect a lead. Like punt the ball away and make the other team go the distance. Arizona has gone for it on fourth down 14 times this year. They've converted 9.
Okay.
Of those. I'm going to give you some of the yard lines that they've gone for it on fourth down. You ready for this?
Okay.
The Arizona 29, the Arizona 43, the Arizona 34, the Arizona 30, the Arizona 30, and the 50. Jed Fish goes for it a lot. Remember the very first game that they played against BYU?
Oh, yeah.
They went
for
it.
First drive, right?
I think it was the first drive. They went for it. Yeah, like a 4th and 1 from right around their own 30. I think did they do a sneak?
Yeah.
Was that a Gunner Cruz sneak?
Yeah, Gunner Cruz sneak.
Yeah, I'm surprised Jed hasn't introduced the tush push, but he doesn't really have the big-bodied quarterback to do it.
The brotherly shove.
You know? Yeah, we got to come up with a name for that. But, you know, to me, every situation's different. You know, like Brandon Staley should have punted in those situations. Like, to me, Dan Lanning made the right decision on fourth down on one of the 3 scenarios that came up. You know, and I don't think you can just go by whatever the numbers say.
Yeah.
You have to know your team. You have to know the opponent. You have to know the situation. And you have to have a good play in your pocket that you can pull out. Like when the Eagles go for it on 4th and 1,
yeah,
they make it like 90% of the time with that quarterback sneak of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Old Push Low instead of Old Pueblo. I know that.
We'll workshop this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're right, Lev. And I think that Arizona, they feel confident enough in their big offensive linemen and also their really good running backs too, to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some hammers back there in DJ Williams and Jonah Coleman who can get you a yard.
Yeah.
And almost every one of those that I mentioned was a 4th and 1.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like that's part of it too. I got one more.
Okay.
This is from Jake Green. Who would you use as a measuring stick in the Pac-12 right now? Feels like we can't assume ASU, Stanford, and Cal are bad anymore. With the close calls UW has had and losses by Oregon and USC, it feels like there's not a dominant team anymore. Even the mid-tier of Arizona, Oregon State, Washington State, UCLA, Utah, and Colorado feels messy. All right, well, first of all, I would not put Utah in the mid-tier. I would definitely put Utah in the upper tier.
I was like, look at
they're the 2-time defending conference champs. they're 6-1 with like backup quarterbacks, and I mean, how many other teams go 6-1 with their starting quarterback being out for the season and their awesome tight end too? And Kyle Whittingham, he is that dude for sure.
What do you say about? He had an all-time quote after the game.
About, like, the quarterbacks, like their quarterbacks, Heisman winner, and ours is a pig farmer. Is that it? Yeah.
All time right there.
So I think Jed actually used the term measuring stick for the Washington game, if I'm not mistaken, as they were going into it. Mm-hmm. So to me, like Washington, Oregon, and Utah look like the class of the conference. Oregon State maybe is in that group too. They're right there. Actually ranked higher than Utah at the moment. Maybe because Utah doesn't have its starting quarterback. All they do is win. But yeah, so hey, maybe the next two games are the measuring stick.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 top 25 teams, like we talked about, really physical teams.
I just got breaking news on my phone.
Yeah, what do you got?
Dallas, Arizona news, Wildcat news.
Okay.
Former Arizona guard / forward Josh Green finalizing a 3-year, $41 million extension with the Mavericks.
I really was trying to get Josh Green in my NBA fantasy draft last night, and I messed up. I could have gotten him in the next to last round, and I'm like, maybe I can wait till the last round. And he got taken. Yeah.
Good player.
Yeah, and they had tons of opportunities for the Mavs this year. I don't want to turn this into a fantasy basketball podcast, but the Mavs, a lot of scoring opportunities and playing time opportunities for young players. But I think there have been some measuring stick games, and I think there are more to come.
Yeah, I think, like you said earlier in the podcast, Lev, it's different styles coming up, right? Like the 3 games that you've played after Stanford, very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, they're all 3 of the top 5 passing offenses in college football, right? Now you're going up against Oregon State, which is Diet Utah, and then UCLA, which has one of the best defensive fronts in the Pac-12, and they probably have arguably the best edge rusher in the conference in Latu. These next couple games, it's going to be very interesting to see how Arizona adapts to. I mean, we've seen Johnny Nansen and that side of the ball adapt to pretty much everything thrown their way. Now let's see how you do it against 12 personnel teams. I think you may have to dial it back to when you were playing against Mississippi State.
We're going to see less of the dollar package in these games because 100%. Of the matchups. Now they threw a wrinkle at Washington State. They went to this flex package with Jeremy Mercer as the quarterback spy. And they've had a bye week to maybe come up with a new wrinkle. I believe it was after a bye week last year that they debuted the dollar package. Correct. So maybe there's going to be something else. Maybe a traditional 4-3 or something of that nature where you get another run-stopping linebacker out on the field. Big opportunities the next 2 weeks for Justin Flo to have an impact on things. I believe it's Justin Flo's birthday today. Yeah. I think I saw that on Arizona football's Twitter account. Happy birthday to Justin, the other Justin, Heem. But I mean, I think he's been pretty effective when he's been out there for the most part. He's been a pretty sure tackler, which has been nice to see. And these types of games,
that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, these types of games are kind of made for him. He's a physical impact, downhill type of player. So, measuring stick for Justin Flo.
I think so.
If nobody else.
Well, and Damian Martinez, right, at Oregon State, arguably the best running back in the conference, or at least one of them. I mean, we saw, like I said, against Mississippi State, they were a run-heavy team. And Arizona kind of unleashed Justin Flo in that second half of that game. And we saw Heem Jones Jr. come out. Will we see Heem again
Did you see the score of the Mississippi State Arkansas game?
No, Saturday? What was it?
7-3.
Oh boy,
Mississippi State won, and Arkansas fired their offensive coordinator today. By the way, but 7-3.
Woo pig!
Thrilling, another thrilling SEC matchup. A lot of exciting ball out there. Big 10, big 20-12 Ohio State Penn State game. Got the The 12-10 Minnesota-Iowa game.
That's what USC signed up for.
I guess. I don't know. Nebraska-Northwestern was 17-9. It's just
that's gross, man.
Isn't it?
That's disgusting. Like if you're like any like offensive skill player, how do you like just pay attention to any of those schools? What would make you want to go to those schools?
So I tweeted.
I would love to be the receivers coach at Iowa.
During the day, during that, what's that?
I would love to be the receivers coach at Iowa. That seems like the best job in the world. You get paid like six figures and you're just whatever.
I tweeted maybe the Big Ten needed USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington more than the other way around, ? My point was like just for entertainment purposes, like these are actually exciting teams that are fun to watch. Somebody, I'm not going to say who it was, texted me about it and said, put the current Big Ten games at night will put us all to sleep.
That's perfect.
So that's kind of where we're at. I think, some exciting Arizona games coming up. And all at night, by the way. Last thing for us, Justin. Last topic.
Let's talk about kickoff times.
7:30 kickoff for Oregon State. 7:30 kickoff for UCLA. Every single home game for Arizona this year has kicked off at 7 p.m. or later. We know that is a mandate when it's September and it's 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. And it was just 100 degrees just a couple days ago. The weather's about to break and change a little bit. There's only one more home game that is yet to be scheduled, right, against Utah. What do you think about the fact that they haven't gotten a single kickoff at home earlier than 7:30? There's been a couple on the road in that 4:30 range.
Yeah. Well, and also, those on the road are on, was it Pac-12 Network was one of them, and SEC Network too. Because you're on the road against Mississippi State. But all the other ones, they're nationally televised games. Wasn't the one on ESPN or against USC? Wasn't that on ESPN?
I mean, look.
So
that's the trade-off.
It's like,
right?
hey, you're kicking off late at night, but you're also on national TV. In Arizona, if you look at the first half of the year, man, a lot of games on Pac-12 Network. So it's been really tough to watch Arizona football games. I think that getting on national TV, especially in the back end of the season when you're vying for a bowl game, I think that's very important right now for the program. So I don't think Jed Fish is complaining about it. Yeah,
I would agree. Someone commented that they'd rather have that than have a game at noon on Pac-12. When they go to the Big 12, I think there's a popular perception that this is all going to change. It's going to change to a degree. When they're at home or when they're at Utah or when they're at BYU or at Arizona State, these are still going to be night games because the networks are still looking for that late night programming window to be filled. It's going to become Big 12 after dark, basically. Now, they have a ton of opportunities to go on the road as well, probably 3 times a year or so. They will be at Houston, or they'll be at Kansas State, or they'll be even at Eastern time zone, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Central Florida. Those games obviously will not be at like 7:30 Arizona time.
No.
So it'll be a little better mix, and every game will be on ESPN or Fox or FS1 or ESPN2, etc. Pac-12 Network will be no more. We have a lot of respect for the people who work there. They put on a good product, but it has been a challenge for a lot of people to see those games.
And also, with the mixed time zones, I think it'd be interesting to get up on a Saturday morning and watch Arizona football kick off at 9 a.m., right?
I think the last time that happened was that disastrous game at Houston.
Yeah.
And was that 2019?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Because that was like 11 o'clock?
So it was 11 local. And so I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it real quick before we get out of here. Clemson was playing Texas A&M that night. So a lot of writers and a lot of scouts came to the Arizona-Houston game. Like, they'll go to that game, and then they'll be able to do a doubleheader. They all left at halftime.
Oh, man.
Because it was so one-sided. It was so bad.
We've seen enough.
Yeah, they didn't show up for that game. So, hey, you know what? You better set your alarm early for some of these games that are coming up, Arizona. Whether you're a fan or whether you're a player, a coach, you better be ready to play.
Are you saying Khalil Tate lost the Heisman that day?
I don't know.
All those voters like, all right, I've seen enough.
That was an absolutely brutal. That was an absolutely brutal performance.
Very one-sided.
Yeah.
All right, that'll wrap up today's Wildcast podcast. We'll be back later on in the week.
It was 2018, by the way.
Was it 2018?
Yeah, 2019 was 2019. They opened at Hawaii, and then they won 4 in a row, and then lost the last 8.
Yes,
right, last 7. 20. That was the game. Houston game was after the BYU opener, so they fell to 0-2.
Okay, was that the first road game then? Yep. All right, that is it for this week's Wildcast podcast, or today's Wildcast podcast. We'll be back later on with our Thursday, Friday, early Saturday, depending on when you listen to the ones later on in the week. We'll have Brett Farah back in.
Pac-12 picks.
We'll do our Pac-12 picks, and we'll get you guys ready for the Arizona-Oregon State game, along with the full Pac-12 schedule. We'll be back later on in the week. As always, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast.